What is going on in this chart?
I've got a lot of questions about where AI is going.
I've got my charts because I found someone brilliant to ask. Boris Cherny, the creator of Claude Code and one of the most important figures in modern AI.
Okay, so this is literacy. The printing press was sometime in the 1450s, so more literature is produced, more people become literate, the price of literature drops. In the 50 years after the Gutenberg press came out, the number of printed material in Europe, there was more printed material in Europe produced than in the 1,000 years before.
Yeah.
And so I think in software, we're somewhere in this early part of the curve. With tools like Claude Code, everyone is starting to be able to code. The amount of code in the world is going to go up. Everyone is going to learn how to write code. Everyone's going to become literate. It's just going to be like reading and writing.
Where do you think we are on this curve? If this is AI, are we at the beginning, halfway up the slope? Frame it for me.
We're somewhere in the maybe the 1700s.
Okay,
we're definitely
kind of
not
at the beginning.
Century. First there was literacy, but without literacy, without the printing press, you couldn't have had the Renaissance. Without the Renaissance, you couldn't have had the first Industrial Revolution. Without the first one, you couldn't have had the second Industrial Revolution. These things stack, and I think today software is at the bottom of it. Everyone has to learn to code.
Okay, and so I think this is really relevant to the second chart, which you'll again be really familiar with. The revenue for the AI companies is now incredibly real. This is the chart I showed to people if they're doubting that AI is a really big deal. So clearly the demand is huge, right? But what is this demand? Is it companies replacing things that they're already doing, or are they doing new things?
We're seeing a mix. And it's actually a mix of companies and individuals. There's people like my mom that's, using Claude now to answer questions. And then there's companies that are using it to automate everything. They're using it to automate business workflows. They're using it to automate coding. There's all sorts of things that you can do with it. So I would say it's a mix.
So non-technical people, are they able to truly replace what developers do? Because it feels like there's still that gap.
I don't think the way to think about it is replacing what developers do. I think the way to think about it is replacing the tools that developers use. And so you can think of it, for example, like you used to have a hammer and now the hammer is automatic. And it's just much more powerful than it was before. And also, by the way, you don't have to be a developer to use it anymore because it's so powerful and it's so easy to use, anyone can use it.
And can you give me an example of something that someone has made who's not a developer and what that could mean?
We just did this hackathon. This is essentially a competition where people were figuring out how to use Opus. And the winners were an electrician, a doctor, a carpenter. And there was a doctor that just automated something about their medical practice. There was someone that works in construction that automated some elements of like zoning to make the process of getting permits for building construction faster. And they built an app for this. And this is something they simply couldn't have done a year ago.
On the question of developers, this is my final chart. This is a chart you might have seen before. It's actually from a colleague of yours, Andy Jones. Horses per person in the United States. And the message is essentially the engine efficiency reached a certain point, and suddenly the horse population of the United States just fell off a cliff. And he's written a fantastic essay where he says, I think software developers are horses. How are you seeing the situation?
I don't think developers are going the way of horses. I think what's happening is everyone is becoming a developer. So it's a democratization. It's not like this thing is kind of going away.
So is it right at all to think of some professions as being horse-like?
I'm like not an equestrian.
Me neither.
Yeah, but it's hard to predict. I think in the middle of a technological revolution, It's very hard to know which way it's going to go. I can speak for software developers.
Yes.
I think software is going to become a thing that everyone is able to do. I think the role of people like me is going to be to guide these systems maybe, but I think in a year, everyone is going to be able to write code as well as I can. My hunch is over the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be 100 times more demand for software developers, but I also don't think we're going to call them software developers.
Going back to the beginning, I suppose when we're talking about literacy and everything it brought, it needed these new institutions to sort of somehow make sense of that. This is an almost impossible question, but what kind of new institutions do you need to make sense of the huge change coming from AI?
I think the biggest thing is as a society, we should be talking about AI safety much more seriously than we are. And this is a conversation that we're trying to be very, very vocal about. There's all sorts of risks of this technology. It's extremely powerful, and this is a conversation that we all should be having together. I don't know what the correct institutions are. I don't work on policy, but I imagine that there's probably a lot of opportunity to fill those gaps.
But what's the risk that you're particularly worried about? I think we all have our own thing that we're concerned about. What is it for you?
There's a lot. I think one that's really been a hot topic is cyber. The models are getting really, really good at hacking and doing cyber, and so we have to make sure that defenders have this technology before the bad guys do. And this is something we're thinking about a lot.
So final question. It's really about how you think about yourself in this huge transformation. I mean, we've seen, now that AI is influencing geopolitics, war, everything. Do you sometimes feel like you have a kind of large moral responsibility, given the scale of what's going on and your role at the center of it?
I do, yeah. But I also think this is not a problem that I can solve. It's not a problem that Anthropic can solve. I think our role is to talk about the problem, so as society we can talk about it and we can figure it out. But this conversation is far bigger than we are.